Hi there. Welcome to the Brazilian module of the Filling in the Gap training program. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a couple of reminders. First, please ensure that the sound is enabled on your device, as the training content is delivered using voice-over and video mechanisms. Second, please be sure that you have your training workbook in front of you, either printed or on the computer screen. Remember that in order to receive CEU credits, you must complete the worksheets on your packet and provide copies to the person at your organization who is facilitating the delivery of this program. For this part of the training, you need to complete worksheets B and C. There are no incorrect responses, but rather, these worksheets are used for your reflection and to put to practice some of the key concepts you will be learning about. Third, please make sure that you have completed the baseline survey. The link can be found on page 1 of your training workbook. This module should last approximately 1 hour. You are welcome to stop or start as needed to complete the worksheets and then return to the material. This module includes 6 sections. I will present you information about how historical and cultural contexts may have impacted the risk of economic insecurity among Brazilian older adults in Boston. As well, I will show you examples of people who need support along with some ideas on how you could provide them culturally responsive service, and then ask you to craft a culturally responsive reaction for a case study. Finally, you will hear some strategies for effective communication, trust building, and outreach. Section 1. Developing an understanding. Brazil borders all South American countries except Ecuador. It is the 5th country in the world by area and the 6th in population. Although Portuguese is the most common spoken language, there is a significant percentage of native groups who speak several variants of indigenous languages dating thousands of years before European colonization. Brazil was colonized by Portuguese explorers beginning in the year 1510. It gained its independence from Portugal in 1822 after the Independence War against Portugal. Brazilian-based Portuguese monarchy ruled Brazil between 1831 and 1889, when the Brazilian Republic was created as a federal republic. Military dictatorships and economic problems in the late 1900s determined the flux of Brazilians outside the country. The European colonization of Brazil, as the colonization of all the Americas, almost produced the extinction of native cultures and people. Before the Europeans arrived, it is estimated that there existed about 2,000 indigenous nations and tribes with a population in order of the millions. Many indigenous people died from diseases brought by European settlers, as well as fighting for their land, while many more were assimilated into the modern Brazilian population. These cultures have shown extraordinary resilience, and they are present in Brazil. These cultures are very well known around the world because of the strong defense that they do of their land, principally the Amazonian forest, against the economic interests of the cattle and timber industries. Currently, there are approximately 200 tribes and about 400,000 natives, representing 0.3% of the population of modern Brazil. Racial diversity of Brazil is a consequence mainly of the mixing of European natives and blacks. Colonial Brazil was the destination of about 80% of all Africans trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade. This intermix between Europeans, native Brazilians, and blacks characterizes contemporary Brazil. However, some regions in Brazil could be more homogeneous than others due to waves of emigration to Brazil by the Italian, German, and Japanese origin people. Brazil is by size the largest Catholic country in the world. However, in addition to Catholicism, there is a strong presence of evangelical churches that little by little are taking an important place in the Brazilian society. In fact, there is a strong presence of Pentecostal churches within the Brazilian community in Massachusetts, mirroring the strong presence of evangelicals in Brazil. A large percentage of Brazilians are active participants in religious activities, including proselytizing. Churches are a source of communal support and play an important role on the cohesion of the Brazilian community. There is also a large presence of religions that trace their roots to the religions brought by slaves of African origin. All these facts make Brazil a place where religiosity and spiritualism take an important role in the daily life of their people. Brazilians are recognized across the world for their large variety of music such as samba, bossa nova, tropicalia, baião, and other traditional rhythms and styles which have influenced musicians everywhere. Samba is worldwide known because its association with the famous Carnaval de Rio de Janeiro. Brazil is known across the world by its immense contributions to the culture. In the US, a well-known Brazilian composer and writer is João Gilberto, who influenced jazz through the so-called bossa nova. Writers such as Jorge Armando and poets such as Vinicius de Moraes have also influenced artists across the world. Brazilians speak Portuguese, a language close to Spanish but different. In some cases, Spanish and Portuguese-speaking people find easier to communicate to each other. On September 7, Brazilians in the Greater Boston area celebrate the Brazilian Independence Day Festival. It is an opportunity to witness the different cultural manifestations of the Brazilian community in the area, such as the different Brazilian music genres, regional dishes, and the warm Brazilian people. Section 2. Local context. The first large wave of Brazilian migration to the U.S. was catalyzed by the 1964 military coup. People fled Brazil with a few thousand establishing in the U.S., most of whom returned to Brazil when the democracy was reestablished. The second large migration wave occurred after economic shocks produced by 1990s economy reforms in Brazil. This immigration stream is mostly from 5 of Brazil's 26 states. This second migration wave benefited of the presence of a well-established Brazilian community in places such as Boston and Framingham, facilitating the integration of recently arrived Brazilians in those communities. In the Greater Boston area, there are over 12,000 Brazilians aged 50 and over. About one-third of them live in low-income households. 8 out of 10 Brazilians are still working for pay. And about 1 of 20 Brazilians in the metro area get the SNAP benefits. This could indicate that they are either ineligible or are not aware that they could have access to that service. A large percentage of Brazilians in the Boston metropolitan area have immigration barriers to access federal social programs and services in the U.S. As well, they encounter other barriers that increase their risk for economic insecurity, such as discrimination and racism, difficult access to higher education, low-wage, temporary, and low-skilled jobs, small accumulated wealth, and limited retirement income, as well as low health coverage. Section 3. Example. Meet Marcelo. Marcelo is a 53-year-old Brazilian male from Minas Gerais, who used to work in construction in Massachusetts until an accident left them with issues in the right hand and unable to work in construction again. Marcelo lives along other Brazilian co-workers, but his only daughter is living in Brazil. His family in Brazil depends on his support, and his unemployment is filling up Marcelo with anxiety and depression. He makes himself to be understood in English, although he does not feel confident speaking it. Marcelo comes to your office asking for advice. What will you do to help him? Here are some things you may consider to help Marcelo. Ask him what language he prefers to speak. If you don't speak Portuguese, speak to Marcelo in English without idioms. Ask whether he would prefer to speak in a more private space. Review the information that Marcelo tells you. Be patient when he speaks and repeats to him in your own words what he says to make sure that nothing is missed in translation. If you have all the information needed to enroll Marcelo in one or more programs, inform him that and provide him a list of next steps for him to follow. Explain that you will follow up on Marcelo's case in relation to the programs that you just talked to him about. Find ways to remind Marcelo about potential benefits that he may be entitled without making him feel that these benefits are offered because he's sick or has issues with his hand. Section 4. Effective communication and building trust. We learned that first impressions are very important in order to connect with older adults. It is common for older adults not to identify as senior, and thus they think the services are not for them. To prevent this, try not to use the word senior unless necessary. Refer to them by their name or last name. Ask them their preference. Also, they may hold some stigma associated with asking for help. Then, briefly explain the materials you are sharing with them and let them know how much you want them to access the program or service that could benefit them the most. Try to communicate that the program or service will benefit from their participation as much as they will benefit from the program or service. To build trust, the first thing we recommend to do is to make them feel like they belong. Why? Because on many occasions they feel ignored or not understood. We suggest using echoing conversation while providing them information about a program or service. Echoing conversation refers to repeat what they say to make them feel heard and to make sure you are understanding why they are trying to communicate. Second, we recommend following up and when referral is needed, then connect them with an appropriate organization. Stay connected with the older adult and monitor the status of his or her application process. When referring them to other organizations, you should provide the older adult a specific name and contact information of the person in the referred organization. They must feel you care about them. Follow up, even if your organization is not directly providing the service. Section 5. Case Study. Next, you will be presented with a case study and invited to craft a culturally responsive reaction. You need Worksheet B on your packet to record your response. Helping Laura. Laura is a 55-year-old Brazilian woman from Rio de Janeiro. Since her arrival to Boston in 1991, she has been working as a domestic worker for a wealthy family in one of the Boston neighborhoods. However, since the COVID-19 pandemic began, her hours were cut by half, and she's having trouble finding a way to compensate for the missing hours to help her daughter's family with whom she lives. She understands English but does not feel confident speaking it, and she understands and speaks a little Spanish. If this were to happen, what are some steps you could take to help her? Please write them down. Please take some time to reflect on Laura's case and use Worksheet B to record your response. Here are some things to consider to help Laura. Ask what language she prefers to speak. If you don't speak Portuguese, ask Laura if speaking with some of your staff in Spanish will help. This if you have someone in your staff who speaks Spanish. Review the information that Laura tells you. Be patient when she speaks and repeat to her in your own words what she says to make sure that nothing is missing in translation. If you have all the information needed to enroll Laura in one or more programs, inform her that and provide her a list of next steps. Explain how you will follow up with Laura in case your center does not offer services that could help her find a job with her qualifications, and refer her to another senior center or community organization that provides such services. Find ways to remind Laura about potential benefits that she may be entitled without making her feel that these benefits are offered just because she is not capable of finding a job. Section 6. Outreach Strategies. What are the best channels to reach older adults? Latino TV and radio works great. We recommend to create a very short and straightforward message about the program or service offered. Connect with consulates to learn which frequencies are more popular among Latino population in Boston. Churches are also great, most often Catholic churches and Christian churches. Churches have very strong ties with the community and are ideal to connect with them and build trust. Also, word of mouth. Referral from a friend or family member is the easiest way to connect with an older adult. Aim to reach family members of all ages. It is important to distribute information about programs and services for low-income older adults among younger population too, since, in many cases, they are the ones connected to several means of communication, such as social media. Younger members of the family can inform older adults of the programs and services available in the community. Some mechanisms and materials that work well to connect with older adults are visual materials. Ideally, include pictures or figures that explain the program or service offered. Do it in a simple and very concrete manner. Remember, less is better. Always use short messages with straightforward information regardless of the means used to deliver the information. We also recommend you create your own information materials. Application formats in English are often very difficult to follow. A translated version is not enough. Work with your staff in creating a more suitable material. Create your own short and clear informative materials in English with input of the older adults from the community if possible. Then, translate those materials. Finally, we suggest to use a family approach. Your organization should aim to reach people of all ages with information about programs and services for low-income older adults. Remember that younger family members are often the ones connecting the older member of the family with service providers. Now, I would like you to reflect on some questions regarding outreach. Please record your responses in Worksheet C on your packet. Who needs to be involved? What materials need to be created? What language skills do you need? Where will you do the outreach? What is the simplest message you are trying to convey? How will you deliver the message? Please take some time to reflect and remember to use Worksheet C to record your response. Finally, refer to page 8 of the course workbook and remember to complete the course evaluation and submit your responses to receive your certificate and continuing education units. Thank you for taking the Filling in the Gap training program.